It depends on the coach. It depends on the environment. So I can't make a blanket statement about whether there's more or less. What we're trying to do is educate coaches how to do things without doing all the lifting and without having to catch the gymnast and without having to throw the gymnast over a vault. It's like those. If you're doing that, you're doing something very wrong.
Hey everyone, welcome to The Rose Show. This week we have former head of education at the Federation of International Gymnastics, Hardy Fink. Hardy has been in the sport his entire life and was even the head coach of the Canadian national gymnastics team starting in 1988. Since then, he has actually made a name for himself in the traditional gymnastics world by creating a worldwide coaching program now used by the F.I.G. Hardy and I chat about the development of educational systems within gymnastics and discuss some of the pros and cons about the new freestyle version of acrobatics. This episode is for both of you young traditional athletes looking to learn more about the F.I.G, but also you older coaches who can appreciate the development of the education system over the last 50 years or so. Okay guys, let's go. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. It's nice to live in paradise on Vancouver Island.
Yeah, they're doing well out there. You said they're opening up and everything, so that's...
Yeah, a couple of days ago they declared us COVID-free. That doesn't mean we can be totally secure, but at least we can be comfortable.
That's better than nothing, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So you are the head of basically the education for the F.I.G, the Federation of International Gymnastics. Can you tell our audience who don't maybe know everything about the traditional side, who you are, what you do, and how you got into the educational role?
Oh boy, that's a long story. Well, first of all, I'm married and I live on central Vancouver Island on a nice Unsprout Lake in the mountains, which is wonderful. I met my wife in 1970, so that's it'll be 50 years we've been together. 2 daughters and 5 grandchildren. Everyone, the entire extended family is on Vancouver Island, which is nice because we see the kids a lot. So I was born in Germany and moved to Canada, to Hamilton area when I was 8 years old. I didn't start gymnastics until I was 16, which in the 60s, that was not so unusual to start late, but nowadays it would be inconceivable. Anyway, somehow it grabbed me and I stuck with it. I was actually studying physics and mathematics, and nuclear physics was my interest. And got sidetracked into gymnastics, and eventually I got a math degree, and then I went on, figured, now what? I got a physical education degree and then biomechanics and a master's degree, so I went on in the sports side. So I did my early gymnastics in the Hamilton Germania Club, which was an ethnic club, small dance hall. We'd set up the apparatus and tear it down every single day. A lot of it was homemade apparatus, just the way it was. We trained outside a lot with a bunch of guys, taught each other because we didn't have such a thing as a coach. But in 68, I became kind of the administrative coach, even though we were coaching each other to make sure we registered for competitions and to organize our workouts. And I guess I've taken gymnastics leadership roles since that time in Ontario and within the club, and not long afterwards nationally and then internationally. So it's been like that. I've had a couple of things that you could say could never happen nowadays. Absolutely impossible, that have kind of graced my life, I guess, or blessed my life. One, I became a F.I.G judge at the age of 21 in 69. Quite by accident, I thought we were going to attend a coaching course because I was the club head coach. So I organized us. We would go to a dual meet, USA, Switzerland at Penn State. And there was a coaching course at the same time. Well, it turned out to be an international judging course. And I passed. The other guys that came with me didn't.
So, that's too bad.
Yeah. So I became a FIG judge. And then in 1970, just as another example of how things can sometimes bless your life if you're in the right place at the right time and you're willing to do some extra stuff, the F.I.G Games. So I was the reserve for the World Student Games in 1970 in Torino. And at that time, there was no budget. it didn't go through the Canadian Federation. It went through what was called at that time the Canadian Intercollegiate Gymnastics Coaches Association, because Gymnastics Canada or Canadian Gymnastics Federation had only recently been formed and hadn't taken much control yet. So the guy that was the president of that insisted that all participants be from the university system, including a judge. So, and I was the head coach of the club and nominally also the head coach of our top gymnast on that team, Steve Mitrick, who was working at the club, training at the club with me. So I became the reserve, the coach for the team, and the judge, because I was the only judge in the Canadian university system with a FIG rating, and also the men's manager. So I had these 4 roles at the World Student Games, which was really, really quite interesting. So, of course, compete if needed, coach until the time necessary, and then once the competition starts, I would judge if I wasn't needed to compete. So that's what happened. And then went on. I became technical chairman in '74 for Canada. I started a private club here in Port Alberni.
What do you mean by technical chairman? What does that mean exactly?
Well, before we had employees in the Canadian Federation. So there was an election. I wasn't even at it and I was kind of recruited to be the technical chairman, which would be like a technical director nowadays, a technical chairman for the men's program committee, or at that time it was men's technical committee in Canada. So I was simultaneously vice president of the Canadian Federation, so that was an elected thing. The election was in Prince Edward Island. I was at the birth of my daughter in Edmonton, so that was
good timing.
And then shortly afterwards, I started a private club here in Port Alberni. We had national team members for boys and girls, men and women, from here in this tiny town, which was successful. And then I became appointed to UBC to teach sports science, biomechanics, and then also the varsity teams. And then started the UBC Gym Club simultaneously with that. And then national coach in '88 and high performance director. That coincided exactly with my election or almost exactly, with my election to the International Gymnastics Federation, the Men's Technical Committee, in 1988 again. And I was there till 2004, and then 2005 I was hired for the academy program to lead the coach education programs. So I could actually name my own title, so it became the Director of Education and Academy Programs, because nobody knew where this thing was going. And that contract actually ended in February 29th, so perfect timing this year. So,
yeah, that's cool. So, but you already worked with everybody, so basically it was more, again, just getting elected for around your peers to really kind of just head up the program? Or was there something special that you were doing with the Canadian system that made you stand apart from everybody else?
Well, a number of things. I was really well known because at that time I was with the Canadian team, and I was also judging at every major world championships and Olympics. I attended all the F.I.G congresses during those years on behalf of Canada. So I was really well known already, and that's why I got elected to the technical committee at the Seoul Olympics. In '96, I became technical president. So in that sense, I was well known. And then with national coach, I had, and as a private club coach, I had quite a bit of coaching success as well. So over time, I guess we're now going into the topic on the academy program, how that happened. At the time, a member of the technical committee was supposed to be a member of the working group to see where it's going to go. And nobody on the International Technical Committee was at all interested except me. So I was appointed to kind of be on the working group to get these things going.
Why were they interested? Don't you think education is probably a key component? And why weren't they interested? Had other stuff to do?
Yeah, nobody knew where this thing was going. There was no such concept at the beginning. We were talking now 94, 95 actually. No one knew it was going to be an academy program. They thought it was more, I'll come to that later, how that process went, more about recommending some kind of age group stuff to the federations. That's how they thought it began. And then it evolved and grew. Anyway, nobody on the technical committee was even interested. And even when I reported back, it was like, why are you telling us this? So I was at all the early meetings right from day one. And then when it finally did become academies, I was one of the experts at the academies, and soon became appointed to lead the whole thing. And I had done this, like I did age group programming in Canada and national team programming and in my club, of course. So it's stuff that I was interested in.
But didn't all the different countries already have their own educational program?
Well, no, you've got to think that the F.I.G. at that time had maybe 110 members. Now it's about 140 member federations. And of course, China and USA and Canada. I mean, Canada had a super coach education program, as you know, and even exported to lots of the world and lots of the other English-speaking countries. So, the top countries, of course, had a coach education program, but the majority of countries really didn't know what to do. Do they, you go to Singapore and do they copy China? Or you go to North Africa, do they copy France? Or do they copy Russia? Or, none of those programs from a leading country had anything to say to a developing country that didn't have resources, didn't have education, didn't have competence. And so it was really to produce something for these countries and say, here, do this. Here's a common level of knowledge that we can give you. And to go all the way to the top takes special circumstances, of course.
Well, yes, there's definitely, if you have more resources, it's easier. I would have thought that, considering you guys have been around for, 100 and something years, you guys were in the first Olympics for gymnastics, right? Way back in, I think, 1898, if I got my dates correct?
1896 was the first one.
96, yes. So if you guys have been around for that long, why did it take so long for the big boys, we'll call them, to give information to the younger guys?
Oh, I think you could pretty well write off the first 50 years in terms of, in really for a whole number of reasons. First of all, sure, we were in the first Olympics as one of the core sports, but the sport evolved so dramatically. If you look at what was done in until basically 1928, and when the women joined, and then 32, 36, it didn't really start to look like our gymnastics till 36. And it didn't look like our women's gymnastics till after 56. So you can pretty well write off the first 50 years and the two world wars, lack of international communication, lack of international travel. When I started gymnastics in 63, there was nothing available. There was no coaching model. There was no decent books that you could learn from.
You can go on YouTube and just learn everything at the click of a button.
I just went on Zoom and asked the questions.
Yeah. Oh, man. Do you think that they would have, let's say, got together a lot faster and been able to disperse that information given if they had all the technology that you see nowadays?
Well, yeah, of course, things would have changed. Technology changed in the last 10, 20 years. It made a dramatic increase. Like I say, in the 60s, God, we're hunting, trying to get these Super 8 or first 8mm videotapes and sometimes 16mm, not videotapes, films of whatever we could, so we could learn something. There was hardly any television broadcasting. And the International Federation at that time didn't even think in terms of taking leadership for education. Everything was about judging and regulating the few competitions they hosted.
Is that because it was going down from the Olympic Committee? So for them, they were more worried about the show than the actual education and safety itself?
Yeah, you have to look at how even the Olympic movement progressed. It didn't become a big business sort of thing. It tried to stay purely amateur until the mid-70s when Samaranch became president of the Olympic Committee. And a number of different things happened to suddenly make money really important and television broadcasting really important. Really, even 68 Olympics. Sure, you can find videos of it, but it wasn't a mass market like now. That really didn't begin until maybe the 84 Olympics, because 80 was boycotted. 84, of course, in the USA, so the big broadcasts were really interested, and the big impetus was a name like Nadia Comaneci, of course. Suddenly everybody knew gymnastics just from her name alone. So yeah, things were quite different there. So there was no thinking of education at all. In fact, many of the people believed that the code of points, and at that time compulsory exercises for men and women, that they were developmental. Of course, they weren't, because compulsory exercise had nothing to do with developing a young child. So if they thought of education at all, it was in the context, well, the code of points gives you guidelines, and the compulsory tells you what you should learn. So, I'm simplifying a bit, but there was
that's the basic structure. It wasn't really like, okay, well, to learn proper shoulder angles for this and that, here's the manual. It was more like by just going through the routines from the compulsory side, that if you made the compulsory routines properly, that would effectively teach you all the things you needed. Was that kind of the theory?
Well, what most countries, many countries, again, I'm talking about 120, 130, 140 as it evolved, member federations. So what the lead federations did, and many others stole or copied what they could, was take the Olympic compulsories and then downgrade them for the lower age groups. And so for junior and for if they had age group programs. And then 4 years later, you'd have a new set of Olympic compulsories, sometimes really weird compulsories. Even as late as 96, the vault was a hecht vault. Like, how did that lead to any future vaulting? And so
I had fun trying to do the hected. I think it was at Woodward or Canadian Venture Camp, and I was playing with that. I couldn't get the bump right, but I did get one.
Yeah, I dislocated an elbow doing one. So anyway, of course, we learned those things when I grew up, because that's the kind of vaults we did. By 96, anyway, so the compulsories were sometimes weird. So when I became national coach in '88, I totally got rid of this concept of downgrading the F.I.G. compulsories. I just said, okay, here's an age group program, because here's how you develop a gymnast correctly, in my opinion, at least, in the opinion of others that worked with me. And then regardless of what the F.I.G. does with quota points or compulsories, your gymnast is ready. And basically that's what the Soviet group did. They didn't worry about the compulsories. They got a new set of compulsories. They looked at them and did them. So it's they had a repertoire that they could do almost anything.
Okay, that's so. But you're making it sound like all the federations really were almost separate entities, and they didn't really communicate that much until they get into the actual competition, and that's where it's just competition. Or was everyone hanging out and chit-chatting after and having beers and whatever? Or was it, no, this is my federation over here and you stay away, Bulgaria?
No. I mean, there was some hiding. People thought they could hide. They had the secrets. There was some of that in Eastern Europe, but then there were some that were willing to share, and we learned a heck of a lot. The whole concept of periodization came from Eastern Europe, and when we first heard about it. And whenever you go to a competition, of course, you communicate with the other coaches, and the coaches communicate with each other, the judges with each other, sometimes collectively. But even when did international competitions begin in a major way? Late 60s, early 70s. The first World Cup by F.I.G. was 75. The first named World Cup was 71 in Miami. It was a U.S. event. But of course, in Europe, it was easy for them to have dual meets, because you could get in a car and you drive to the next country. But how much interaction was there across North America? Almost nothing. Or across Asia, or across Australia, and or the Africas. So there was very, very little interaction the way we know now. Very little access to flying across the universe, really, again, until the 60s. So everything kind of started to evolve quickly in the 60s with better training methodology, with better apparatus. And then copying from each other became easier. Seeing what others were doing became easier. And now, of course, there is no such thing as a secret, because everything is online. In fact, now what you have to do is decide what is not a secret you don't want to accept.
Yeah.
There's too much.
That is really cool. So when you guys were developing it, as through the 60s all the way up, and the new research coming out, psychology's coming in, you're introducing this stuff slowly but surely. Was this done by the federation separately, or is this done by the F.I.G. and passed to the federations?
No, again, the F.I.G. did nothing on coach education until these programs started. I'll talk about those in a few minutes. So of course, Russia had what they needed for their high performance groups. But did they worry about mass clubs or professional clubs or business-oriented clubs? Of course not. There was no such thing. They just went to schools and selected people, as did East Germany, as did most of these top countries. Of course, the United States developed in the way of professional clubs, as did Canada, but that didn't begin really till the 70s. And Canada really was a leader in coach education, and we have to give an incredible amount of credit to Keith Russell, who was kind of the brains behind our coach education in Canada, and I was part of that already back in 73, 74, but he was really the leader of this whole concept. And then the NCCP program coincided with that. And of course, they gave the funding, and that started with Jeff Cowan, with the Canadian Coaching Association. So that became the push in the 73, 74, 75, when we had our first courses in Canada. And then our courses were basically copied by England at that time, by Australia, by South Africa, and New Zealand, and others. Became quite widespread. So that was from the Canada perspective, but other countries did stuff. So England went much further then, did much more. France has a great educational system. Germany has an education system. So, most top countries, and I say most top countries, we're really talking only maybe 20, maybe 25 countries would develop a program. Others would copy. I can't say specifically I'm right about this, but probably Belgium copied what France did, for example. And Luxembourg copied what France did. Italy copied what France, Spain, and then modified it a bit.
Okay, that's cool. So everyone's trading back and forth. But now, from a theoretical perspective, as the F.I.G head educator, would you rather all countries kind of follow a similar program, or would you like to be able to bring in specific cultures? Like you said, the U.S. had their own sort of professional way of doing it compared to Germany and Russia. So is that why the F.I.G never really got too hands-on with that? Because everyone had their own sort of way of doing it, and as long as they did something, then the F.I.G sort of let them do it?
Well, again, the F.I.G saw itself not so much as a developmental organization as a regulatory organization. So they did the compulsories until they were abolished. They did the quota points every 4 years and gave judging courses to certified judges. They had an occasional seminar that pretended to be for coach education. They made sure that the World Championships and the Olympic Games, at least the gymnastics part, were regulated properly and following rules, and people registered, so those sort of things. And there really wasn't anything. There were judging symposia. There was a judging symposium in 71. There was one in 82. There was one in 85 and 86 and 91, 93. But none of them were coaching symposia. They were all judges. To see what can they do with the quota points, because the quota points was always falling behind, following the trends. It was never proactive. It was always reactive, and it was always, what shall we do to make it proactive? That's a whole other story.
Proactive is hard because humans are, I think, naturally, based on the research at least, and my experience, of course, but they tend to be reactive more than they like to admit to themselves. And it's tough keeping ahead of the pace.
Well, yes and no. In artistic gymnastics, and probably most of our disciplines, we can pretty well predict what will be done in the future. No one's going to do 4 flips on the floor exercise unless something dramatic happens with the apparatus. So maybe we'll see a full twisting triple for sure. But we can pretty well predict everything, and that can be the model really. So what the F.I.G has done, largely because it's my fault, people say, because I developed this new paradigm for judging gymnastics, but artistic gymnastics is really a clone, not a clone, somewhat of a ripoff from trampoline, because you had the difficulty score, and that was kind of unlimited, and you had the way that the elements would increase in value, and you had an execution score. And then how you calculate the final score is, can change over time. But if you take the execution deductions from the 1950s, a small mistake was a deduction, a bigger mistake was a bigger deduction, and a giant mistake was a bigger deduction. And so what we did in artistic gymnastics was to try to put everything under 10. And that never worked because the gymnasts always exceeded the 10 in the minimum expectation. So when, we're getting off track here now on the judging side, but I can give a big experience from me. So I was not a great gymnast, but in 1970, for example, the basic requirement in the routine was 1 C part. We didn't have D's and E's and F's at that time. 1 C part and 4 B parts. Well, that was what I could do, and that was basically the limit of what I could do, for example, on high bar. So then Ken Motsu goes to the World Championships. He became world champion, high bar champion in 1970. He did 10 C's in direct succession. No A, no nothing. Boom, 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 boom. But both of us were theoretically 10 points. There was no way I was at the same 10. Even if I did perfect execution and someone gave me a 9-9, my 9-9 couldn't equate to Ken Motsu's 9-9. So it was always bullshit. So, so that was, and even before that, I realized, Steve Mitrick was a better gymnast in my gym, but occasionally I could beat him because I could get the same final score as him. And other people could occasionally beat me that were lower than me, just because everybody started from 10, no matter what their content was. So that, and then when you look over the decades, what happened time and time again, often even every year, rather than every 4 years, was we played with the difficulty. We played with the number of elements. We added D's, E's, F's. We played with the value of the elements. And we played with the final, the numbers that were required. We played with how much is combination and how much is difficulty and how much is execution. So it was always playing with the difficulty. Because the execution really didn't matter. Of course, it was modified, but it didn't matter. A mistake is a mistake.
So you always have to update the difficulty scoring, all that sort of stuff, not because the execution's that much different at the end of the day. Like, obviously it looks a lot better now than back then, but it was more the difficulty that really just kept meaning that you had to change it up all the time just to make sure that as we got better at doing the sport, the scores, you would reflect that.
Yeah. I mean, that was our problem. So, you get to 68 Olympics and it was, 64, someone did double back on floor, but then there wasn't another one until 72. So it took a long time. 68, Menachelle would have done it, but he tore his Achilles in compulsories. So 72 was our next double back on floor. But then very quickly, people are doing full dressing doubles and double straights. And the code never foresaw any of it. Like, what do you do? And someone like Ken Motsu comes along and does 10 C parts in a row when he only needs 1.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's like, how do you really predict that in a sense? That's not even just human error. That's just human amazement, really, because you never know when some genetically gifted, hard-working kids, coming down the pipeline, and you don't know it.
But that's the problem. You don't need to predict it. Like trampoline didn't predict that someone's going to do 4, maybe triple with triple twist, whatever the hell you do now in trampoline. They just left it open. That's your difficulty, and you add it up. Of course, they made modifications over time, I know, but
so why didn't gymnastics follow that? It seems very logical. Why did they do that?
Because it wasn't going to happen until I came along and made the proposal and presented the system that could make it work.
Cheers to you, man. That's awesome.
A lot of conflict and people still misunderstand it. The other part, of course, is that in trampoline, using the same difficulty judging system, basically, you can evaluate a beginner routine and you can evaluate the Olympic champion.
Yeah, it's a smart system. I never had a problem with the Canadian or any trampoline judging system. I didn't know that was your brains behind all that.
Long story. We're off track here, but basically, I presented a concept where I referred to it at that time as a universal code because it could be used for beginners. Like, what do you do if a guy does a headstand on floor or a shoulder stand on rings? There's nothing in the code of points. Like for your first 2 years of work, there's nothing in the code of points that gives you anything. It's
right. Yeah.
Back handspring done well is 2 years, and a giant swing done well is 2 years, or handstand on rings is 2 years. So I called it universal and permanent because, in the sense, if the difficulty scale is open-ended, that's permanent, and the execution can be permanent. So it can more or less accommodate any future development. I can talk forever about judging because that's been my life and my hobby to some extent. The problem with most of our disciplines, except parkour now, is that the movement repertoire is very much limited. So we have almost no degrees of freedom. This is a flip or a salto. This is a twist. That's it. And then along comes all this off-axis stuff also that you specialize in. This is free movement, flipping, twisting in all kinds of variations, and not necessarily with what we call perfect pointed toes and so on. And so none of that fits in our traditional gymnastics. So the closest we've come to adopting anything like this now is with parkour. And I've had quite an interesting set of experiences with parkour to make them part of us within the education system. You know, what can they learn from gymnastics? What can we learn from them?
What have you noticed from them? Because that's basically what we're doing with our freestyle guys. So what have you learned so far?
I think we're maybe off. I'm not sure. We're on your topic, so it doesn't. So where do I go with this? They are now stuck. That's my opinion, and they can disagree with me. Stuck by having maybe joined F.I.G with the dream and maybe the certainty of being an Olympic sport. And suddenly this concept of freedom versus structure is gone or interfered with. As soon as you become an Olympic sport, there's all kinds of structure. You know, suddenly things have to be defined a little more. The length of the routine, the length of the performance, the height of the obstacles, the type of obstacles, the judging has to be more formal. You can't. I was at one of their World Cup events and was invited in to listen to their judging meeting. Well, it was a bunch of friends talking to each other, and well, she's going to do that, and what do you think we should give that? And it's like, and I told them, listen, if I had videotaped this thing, you'd be out of the Olympics immediately, you know, because so you know there has to be this concept of being distant as a judge from the performer and from the coaches. You know, you can be friends afterwards, but certainly not in competition and not when you're having a meeting. So that's an interesting possibility for a problem, maybe an opportunity. I don't know how they see it, but for many of them, it's a problem. They don't want to be structured. They don't want regulations. They want to be freestyle. And then there's the difference between the speed event and the freestyle event, or is it going to be an all-around? So if you look at the demands of freestyle, which is basically modified gymnastics, you know, like high-level gymnastic skills without worrying about perfect form and being off axis, but basically that sort of stuff, acrobatic skills, and then speed. The top speed people are going to be a different somatotype from the acrobats. So the top freestylists will be more like our gymnasts, and the top freestylers or speeders will be more like track and field athletes. And so if you have an all-around event, you have quite a special athlete. If you separate them, you're going to separate the populations. Yeah, so there's some interesting problems that they have to deal with. I don't know how that'll go in the future. From a coach education perspective, of course, they never, as a group, because they freestyle, they did what we did in the 60s, 50s, 60s. When we were out there, we just trained by ourselves, taught each other, learned from each other, spotted each other, egged each other's on, you know, and had a beer afterwards. And, you know, they're in that mindset, and it's great. And I appreciate it, because that's that mentality, that experience is what kept people like me and my generation loving the sport forever. And, you know, many of the kids that now quit because they burned out at age 14, or they hate their coach at 14, or they've been abused or in some way by age 14, they'll never love the sport. They'll never want their kids in the sport. So this parkour group is of course, they love their activity and they're going to stay in it forever. But once it becomes regulated and structured, it'll be different. So, but because of this, they never thought in terms of how do you now prepare athletes for the future? What do you need to know about landing forces, about growth of joints, about growth plates, about anatomy, physiology? They just went out and did stuff. And they were incredible athletes, as yours are, incredible what they can do. But they never thought in terms of, well, I remember, but the first meeting I had with them, I explained what we had in the F.I.G for my academy program and the age group development and competition program, and how it could be modified for their purposes. And Charles Perrier, who's the president of that commission, said, well, we cannot teach parkour, we must discover it. And my comment, it was like, okay, you're now an Olympic sport. China is going to start with 6-year-olds and train them specifically to win Olympic gold medals, and you can keep discovering. You know, so yeah, I don't know what I'm not saying the Olympic pathway is the right thing, but once you're in that pathway, it's different. But let me just expand. Let's look at the gymnastics community. How many are in the Olympic? So we claim to have approximately 40, 50 million people doing gymnastics. Might be more because people everywhere, every school, everywhere does it. When you look at our world championships, add up all the participants at a world championship in all 7 of our disciplines, we don't get 1,000 people. And when you look across the world, how many are really trying to do high performance? A lot of people compete at lower level, but maybe there's 10,000. But we're talking about 40, 50 million. So the subset of those that are doing a serious path to Olympics or World Championships is so tiny, tiny, tiny that we really have to, hey, how do we keep the sport healthy and safe and fun for the rest of you without all this structure?
Well, that's an interesting that you bring that up, because that's the problem I saw when I was 17, 18 on Team Canada trying to figure out what I was going to do. I saw, no offense, I saw a dying sport. A bunch of guys in tights. No one wanted to wear that. People don't want to pay for that. People don't want to. They don't want to. The branding's not there. It's not GoPro. It's not Red Bull. It's not all the stuff that we know is going. You know, extreme sports and whatever you want to define that as has grown. You know, like 25% over the last couple of decades. And right now, it's like, well, what's going to happen with gymnastics? Are people going to want to see perfect automatic control because that's apparently what is optimal? Or do they want to see reality? They want to see behind the scenes. They want to see vlogging. They want to see real people fall down and make mistakes so that they can relate with them. So we saw a sport that was just unrelatable to what the new generation was already telling, you know, the researchers and just through experiences. So we're like, okay, well, you don't need one or the other. You need a bit of both because, like you said, you need the structure. And too bad for the parkour guys that they don't realize, you know, you got to dot your I's and cross your T's and all that sort of stuff. But at the same time, if you do that so much, it takes away from the actual sport. Like you said, you might not have been into it if you had to do that from such an early age. So I look at freestyle as more like a recreational program for those who aren't 100% committed to the Olympics and are just discovering the passion for the sport first. And from those people, I would like lower regulations, more freedom, more discovering, like they said. But at the same time, why can't, you know, the traditional community come together and at least provide them the tools? You can't force them to use it. You can't force them to tell them how to use it. But why isn't there more opportunity for them? You know, was the first question that I asked.
Well, yeah, that I don't think that it's not that there is no opportunity for them. It's that the clubs and most of the coaches are oriented in this pathway, even though realistically the kids in their club and the kids they're coaching are never going to get all the way. So the pathway to Olympic success, let's just call it more is better. Well, more is not better. You know, in fact, more is worse in many cases. You know, you burn the gymnasts out, they get psychological problems, physical problems, growth plate problems, injury problems, lack of motivation problems, lack of recovery problem. You know, so you know the story. So yeah. Part of the education is say, hey, let's be smart, and and the entire concept, what we try to do in F.I.G is what is athlete-centered, gymnast-centered. And you as a coach are there, I use this phrase, the slave for the gymnast. The gymnast is not your slave. You are there to serve what the gymnast needs. And too many coaches still have the gymnast serving what the coach needs. So ego involvement. It's just
yeah.
So that's a big. Well, you know, it's the biggest problem for coaches that aren't even all that successful. That are, you know, they're doing, like if you're doing the U.S. for the women now, the U.S. level system. Great, it's a recreational system. But many somehow have got in their mind that it's a high performance system. Well, it's got nothing to do with high performance. You know, kids at age, you know, girls at age 14, 15 are in level 6 are doing a back tuck, you know, after 10 years or 8 years of training. So, you know, they're having fun. They're winning stuff. They're social environment. They enjoy gymnastics. They should be doing gymnastics. I love everybody doing it. But don't pretend. Don't train them like you're thinking they're going to be an Olympic champion. It's just a lie to them. It's a lie to yourself. It's a lie to your resources.
It's not pressure. It's like a pressure cooker system too, and I feel bad because as having been a coach and still coaching now, but just in a whole different sort of capacity, you go in and, there's all that pressure says, well, if I don't learn, this by this level, blah, 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 I'm going to get kicked out of the program. And then the parents are going in with their already kind of, demons and biases. Oh, my kid's got to win the Olympics because I was a failure or whatever it is. And then the administration wants their money. So they kind of prolong that. Then now they're stuck in front of a 16-year-old coach in training that now is apparently supposed to get results to a kid that doesn't even understand what they're getting signed up for. And it seems, I think you hit the nail on the head, is that everyone's so focused on the Olympics that the Olympics to me is one very small aspect of the sport. When you look at what the sport could become and all the uses for trampoline, like turn the trampoline upside down and throw stuff at it, or, use it to launch it off and do a long distance jump into sand, UFC on trampolines, basketball on trampolines, slam ball, remember slam ball?
Spaceball. I used to love Spaceball, when the Nissan double trampoline with the hoop in the center.
Yeah, I did that. That's all. I saw a sport that just was so linear that I was like, guys, you're missing so much opportunities here with just athlete development, education as well, and everything. I wanted to kind of go my separate way. I was actually told by the the Australian president at the time for gymnastics. He basically said, well, you're trying to do this freestyle stuff with Nitro Circus, and that's where I kind of got the idea, because I saw Travis and all those guys. I'm like, oh, this is what trampoline could really become, screaming fans and go, 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 not good job, everyone. So when I got that, he said, look, don't give it to the F.I.G. Do your own thing. Because I said, well, what if I go to the F.I.G. and tell them basically we can do something cooler? He said, don't do that. They'll steal it from you. And I'm like, okay. So then that was kind of our start. I said, all right, well, let's figure it out on our own first, figure out what it is. And then, we're always trying to keep nice with the traditional guys, even though, as some of them are not so nice to us, but we're trying to keep that happy balance. And it'll be very interesting to see where it all goes in the future,
Well, you're this kind of counter culture acrobatic sport in there, right along the line with the skateboarding culture and the snowboarding culture and the mountain bike culture and the BMX bike, that whole sort of stuff. So you're in there. So for me, I don't even want to begin to pretend that Olympic pathway is the right thing for most people. It's the right thing for some.
Yeah.
And really, that's the sports that F.I.G. offers is that, because we're basically Olympic or World Championship or
that's what you guys do.
World Games sports. And so we have to say, here's how you develop the kids safely in that direction, technically, physically, psychologically, emotionally, and all those components of making a total athlete. What we have probably allowed to happen, I'm not sure allowed to happen, we're trying to educate away from that, is to make the gymnast not sufficiently independent or self-reliant, to taken away fun, and that's part of the culture of what maybe was inherited from the Eastern Bloc countries, from the Soviet, maybe Chinese countries, because you look at the quality of the gymnast, but it's not the only pathway. You get Shawn Johnson, for example. She was able to get there and she had fun all the way through and still loves it. So, so we're trying to educate people and saying, listen, be careful with the kids. It's athlete-centered. We, of course, try to offer, here's what you need for high-performance results. So if trampoline is going to steal your G-Tramp stuff or whatever you guys do, the F.I.G. trampoline, I don't know. But I think some of them certainly are open to widening the offerings and widening their impact. But I can't imagine, certainly for myself, I can't condone flipping and twisting until you hit. So, I can be absolutely fascinated, and I'm absolutely amazed by the air sense, by the ability these kids have. But to keep flipping and hitting and flipping and twisting until you make contact with the trampoline and you land. And I mean, it's amazing how they like cat twist at the end and still survive. But
well, it's been a learning process for me, because I came in with a traditional attitude, because that was the culture that I grew up in, so it was still there. I've tried to get away from it as what would be calculatedly possible, not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but trying to kind of see these kids' perspective. And when you see the kids' perspective, they're basically saying exactly what the parkour guys are. They want to do in their own image. They take the value of learning themselves. So instead of this whole, I need the coach to tell me the answer so I can win a medal, for them, it's like, I want to be able to figure out myself how to do it, which kind of puts us into a tough position, as you obviously know, because then we're like, well, we want to kind of create some sort of structure here, but at the same time, we don't want you guys dying, but we also can't take away from what they as a community, because they are a community before we got involved. We invested in it after it already started. It was starting around 2007 with a bunch of snowboarders on their garden trampolines and stuff. So we came in saying this could go really bad if someone doesn't step in and at least do something, And what we've seen is just that these kids, you'll look at it and say, oh my God, he almost died. Oh, and we're all cringing. And me and Trish are doing the same thing, and all the organizers. But then the kids pop up and like, oh, nothing happened. It was a perfect one. And in our head, we're like, okay, well, can we promote that? Can we not promote that? But the reality is that if you don't promote it, then they take it as a personal insult, because for them, it's like a world's first. It's a new thing. It's a thing that they've trained potentially like a couple of years for. And all of a sudden you're going to say, well, no, it wasn't safe, so it's not good enough. You're now going to basically undo all that work and basically tell the kids, nope, you're not doing it unless it's my way. And then they'll shut out and they'll just do it themselves anyway. But then we won't even have any kind of positive effect on them if we basically just throw them.
I'm not sure if that's right, because if they're if they're ducking under at the last microsecond or landing kind of sideways on their shoulders, that's not healthy. I mean, the problem is that as you add number of flips and twists, which you're doing, and I mean, incredible the number they're able to throw before they land, the margin of error gets smaller. And then when you add the double bouncing, triple bouncing, quadruple, you got 4 people double bouncing someone. They get so much more height, but then you have additional sources of potential error. If any of those double bouncers makes a small mistake and the guy's launched himself in the air, now you have a real problem. So in acrobatics, like the F.I.G. acrobatics, men's fours used to have a quadruple back. And so I don't know if I agree with it being outlawed now or prohibited, but the consideration was not necessarily the gymnast being able to do 4 safely. It was a matter of 3 partners throwing them. If any one of the group makes a mistake on pitch or on catch, there's a catastrophic injury. So and when you start having 4 people double bounce someone, it's like, you have so many potential.
Well, I get freaked out because, of course, they're doing at our events, where we're all there and the brands are there, and we're like, oh, and there's been lots of times where we say, guys, what the hell are you doing? You're like, stop right now. But I guess here's my question to you then, is because, again, this is all learning for us. Like, I've never had to try to nurture any kind of online community. We have about 100,000 kids around the world that say they're freestyle or G-Tramp, but what if you were in my position? What would you do? How would you reach these kids, knowing that as soon as you basically don't tell them what they want to hear in some psychological, tricky sort of way, then they're basically just going to shut you out and do it anyway and without any kind of leadership? What would you do if you were in my position?
Well, I mean, everything people do comes down to some extent to what's rewarded. So if a sideways landing or a last microsecond duck under, it's just not acceptable.
We actually have our rules actually scripted out on our website. So we give them bonus points for creativity and for clean landings. And 66% of their actual score at our competitions are all actual safety execution based, right? Because there's a kid that did 7 flips, right? But no one's going to do 8 unless they get 20 more people to double bounce them. And you're hitting that plateau of just human, behaviors in that sort of way. And we're saying, okay, well, that's boring anyway, because even though 7 flips is cool, but I would rather see more back to that rotational possibility stuff. Show me those moves. Show me that you can jump and put one leg behind your head and do a side flip. Show me you got that kind of control. And that's where we're trying to actually push them to. Just
that I would agree with. Let's explore the movement repertoire. That's what you're trying to do.
That's what we're trying to do.
In all kinds of ways that we don't permit in our traditional sports. But I think a bit of education for them might not hurt. For example, kids in that 11, 12, 13-year age group, they can learn the most incredible complexity in the air. That's the perfect time where the brain is quite malleable, where they can learn these incredible skills. But they can't have bad landings because they have open growth plates. If they're under-rotated or under-twisted, or they have to be a little bit careful. So they learn that stuff in a safe way, maybe in bungee belts, into a pit, whatever you want to do. But they can't have really, really hard landings and twisted landings and so on. And then, of course, by the time, you know how it is when teenagers, especially boys, when they're 17, they're indestructible. At least they think they are.
And they catch up with you.
That's why more young men die than anything else, right?
Well, yeah, that's all that sort of stuff. But let's say you have a kid in front of you. You see a kid that then he does it badly. So you're literally walking down the street and you see a kid doing G-Tramp. And you say, holy crap, that kid almost landed on his head. What, if you go over there and talk to him, what kind of behavior modification do you believe you would get?
I think in the heat of the moment, that's probably the worst time to talk to the person.
Well, that's definitely something to be said for that as well. And this is what
you certainly praised what was done well. And then say, listen, if you did this, it might be safer, it might be better, it might look better, it might give you higher marks. If the 66% is on a safe landing, then you just threw away 65%.
Well, and it's actually worked the best. It's kind of funny. People don't see the behind the scenes, which is kind of why we want to do this podcast. But they don't realize when we first started working with these kids, we couldn't even get them to follow any rules or even line up and do their turns properly. They didn't use throw mats, which they are all using throw nets now. They're all now going and looking to go train inside of controlled gyms or trampoline parks, and they're now actually working as cohesive teams as athletes, because that's the way we position them, because for a lot of different reasons. And they have educational manuals from us. The parents get manuals, so every time a parent messages us or signs up for one of our events with their kids, they get emailed a PDF that tells the parent how they can be a positive influence and stuff. And the rules are all right. Like, people just don't see all that stuff because, well, honestly, I talked to a guy the other day. He was a critic, and I got him on the phone, and he basically realized that, there's a lot more to it, but they just don't realize. I personally don't think that the freestyle branding of any kind of freestyle sports, whether it's skateboarding or, parkour or anything, you can't run around talking about safety. You can be safe and not talk about it. The problem is, as soon as you start talking about it to these kids, they shut down so fast. So we learn really quick. Okay, we can be safe, but we gotta be sneaky. Okay, well, I gave an extra few points to this kid. We had a kid that basically was about to go for something, and I basically walked over to him, put the mic down, and said, "Yo, you're not gonna go for this. You're gonna stop right now because you're gonna die." And then he's like, "Are you sure?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not going to let you go." Just privately, just to the side. It's like, okay. And then I get on the mic and basically say, "Hey, congratulations, Bryson. He was going to go for it, but he said he wanted to take the smarter route and didn't go for it." And everyone clapped, and the parents are clapping, obviously. The mom comes over to me after the event and says, "Thank you so much for saying that, because I don't want these kids to get pushed beyond their limits." And we are saying the same thing. We just don't market it out and yell about it on Facebook because nobody cares. The community is that thriving, cool attitude. You can't run around and talk about safety every 10 seconds. It has to be inherent in the system.
You can talk about future potential, because no matter what activity, whether it's piano or freestyle tramp, you build a groundwork of basics that allows you high level of success in the future and better tricks. So when we talk about purely aerial skills, that age group 11, 12, 13, I mean, it's perfect. Plastic brains, it's perfect time to learn really, really advanced skills. But that doesn't mean they should be competing them. And that's the whole thing. They should be training the most complex things in the universe and under safe conditions. You don't want to use the word safety, but, in a bungee belt or into a pit. And then cut way back on competition. Like you do the 7 flips if that's going to be the goal. Not when you're 11, 12. You do it when you're 17, 18, 19.
Well, it's interesting because I called up a guy named Alfie Cohn. He's a big proponent of not ever having anyone ever compete in anything ever, and he's all over the media with that sort of stuff. So I called him up. I'm like, hey, I got this freestyle community. I need some help. I know you're a researcher and you do all this sort of stuff. What should I do with my guys? I basically need, like you said, I need a reward system. And without competition, I don't really have a reward system because if they're not athletes, then Red Bull and GoPro and all these guys, they don't pay for them to go anywhere because they're just a bunch of losers in their backyard. So we needed them to be athletes so that they would take it seriously. But like you said, then we trade that off because then, well, now there's more of a gotta go for it kind of attitude. So we offset that by saying, okay, yeah, but we're only marking more creativity. And now we are seeing, you see a shift. When the first GT games we did or event, it was just huck and chuck and hold and hope you don't die, right? And now what we're seeing is more twisting, more technical positions, better edits. I think it's just a natural progression. And if you give it 40 years, I think what you're going to see is a lot more traditional style videos and competition structure. I think they're just new, and I want to see where they go with it, and they just need a bit of help. And I just wish the traditional guys would see them not having to be in their lane, but could have their own separate lane. Yes, there's a little dangers. That's welcome to skydiving. Welcome to any thing you're ever going to do. Why can't both lanes kind of work simultaneously? And that's been my question from the start.
Yeah, I mean that's fine. Like I say, not everyone has to do the traditional gymnastics. It's especially towards a high level. It's for the very, very few, and this stuff will attract a whole different population, and they're also very, very few. The incredible air sense that they have, it's really, really special. So they're mutants, just like our ring specialist is a mutant. Basically, if you look at overstating a little bit, but you look at every Olympic champion in any sport, the Olympic champion is a bloody mutant.
Of course, they're different. Now, here's an interesting question, since we're kind of on the freestyle topic. I personally would love to see a world where you don't need a coach, where you've trained all the future people, and there's so many tools out there and so much information available very easily to access that you fundamentally could create your very own career, go to Olympics or go to whatever freestyle event Red Bull's doing or something like that. Would you ever see that would be a possibility where everyone is self-taught, but they're doing it effectively? They're not dying. They actually have trained it so everyone is independent, and coaches really are just gone out of the picture, and maybe coaches are more like a sponsor manager, but not actually an athletic manager. Would you ever see that world?
Well, part of the surfeit of information that's out there is that you need to be selective. And it takes some education and some knowledge and maybe some leadership to direct them at least to what's useful. I don't think, again, looking for Olympic pathway, that's certainly not an efficient way of getting there. You can't discover your way to the Olympics. So, in that sense, it doesn't work. When you look at the lower levels of ice dancing or figure skating, they would go on, when the ice rink is available at 5 a.m. and have a 1.5 hour session with the pro, and then come train on their own for the week and come back at the end of the week. I actually tried to develop something like that for gymnastics, so I wouldn't have to be with the gymnasts all the time, and some other younger coaches could just supervise that they're doing it. So, for example, you want to learn a kip. Well, you've got to do so many leg raises, and you've got to be able to do a pullover, and you've got to be able to do jump to support. A couple of things you have to be able to do first. So I go in, you get your half-hour lesson. This is would be a little more, but once a week you'd have the lesson with the head coach, and then you have this checklist. And at the end of the week, we'll see. Can you do all this on the checklist? Okay, you're not ready for a kip yet. We'll come back next week. So I actually started working on something like this, so you don't have to spend 40 hours a week with one group of gymnasts, one small group of gymnasts. You meet them once a week. And maybe at some lower levels that's possible, but still for the Olympic, once you go Olympics, it's different if that's the pathway. And once you start competition, as you guys are doing, things will change. You'll get, whether you want it or not, there will be more structure over time.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, I look at this saying, like, well, look, the F.I.G. started freestyle for all for, you know, lack of a better term, and you guys kind of did it like teams, like these kids are doing it. These kids might be a little bit more crazy, partly because social media now promotes everything like that, partly because that's just biology anyway at that age. You know, it's like a what do you call it? A rite to passage for these kids, because for them it's like, if I can be good at this, I can be good at life, you know, and we become more like life coaches for these kids. It's not even really just about trampoline, and a lot of people don't see that aspect. We'll have families that bring their kids over and they do co-op hours with us, and they'll pay everything, and the kid will basically travel with us, run events, set things up, and do all that. And people don't see that aspect of it. So what I'm seeing is that the coach role in the future will be changed to not really just, oh, here's, like you said earlier, this is the plan from A to B, get to the Olympics done. I'm thinking it's going to be generally people are less focused on that one life-consuming sort of thing. Obviously, there's still people, but there's less people that are willing to do that. So it's going to now become more diverse and dispersed. You know, the coach will do some sponsorship. They'll do mathematics class with the kids. They'll do homework with the athletes. They'll do conditioning. They'll do sponsorships. They'll do, you know, just how to get a regular job. And would you ever see that happening? Or is it always going to be you go to the coach, but maybe you go for less hours?
For sure, to be self-reliant, to be independent is part of the process of growing up, and we should encourage that. But to say no coach is not realistic, I don't think, because somehow somebody still has to be selective, has to decide what's important, what's not. And it's also the type of coach, and we talk about this in the academy program as well, the type of coach that a gymnast or an athlete needs over a 20-year period, lifespan, for example. So when you're a young kid, you need someone that makes it fun, that's going to turn you on, that you want to keep coming back, and nothing's more important than you than bouncing and being stupid on a trampoline. Okay, so, which is great, that's what you want. And at some point, once that kid makes a decision, hey, this is really what I want to do, they really need some technical instruction to be safe, to be precise, to blah, 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 blah. And then now when they're 17, 18, 19, they don't need that anymore. Now they need a mentor, a buddy. You know, like you look at Shusha Pitana, she goes around the world with Boganskaya as her coach. They used to compete together, and she's not her coach, they're just buddies. You know, because she certainly at age 45, she doesn't need a coach anymore. But you know, and that's the extreme case. But yeah, by the time, and I think there's lots of falling out when a coach that was that strict technical coach, and not referring to your sport necessarily, but the technician person that's organized and says this is what you do and how many repetitions and here's a recovery period and so on, and translates that when the kid's now 20, no longer a kid, and still wants to have that same role, then it's stupid, and they have a falling out. So there might be, it's very rare in our sports to have the same coach through an entire career.
Yeah,
because it takes
a bunch
different psychological coaches, and you know, you need at least probably 3 different psychological makeups.
Yeah,
and competencies as well, because the technical coach might have competencies that are much different from the one that turns you on, and from the mentor.
Well, and that's what I think I'm seeing, because when we talk to the kids, they just want to do it themselves. And the problem with coaching, if you do too much, I agree with you that if you have enough coaching, it'll open the techniques so you actually understand and you have a platform to build on. But then when the coach pushes past that point of just you know, providing the tools and support, and they become now the, you know, virtue becomes a vice, that's what I see a lot. And this is where.
But so I mean, the coach doesn't have to be the regulator, the controller, but the coach can be the advisor.
But they think of
because you're not going to have any trouble getting these kids to come in and bounce on trampoline. That's what they want to do. Okay,
but when I talk to the coaches, I do clinics all over the place, and just the regular word on the street, we'll call it, I guess, is that the coaches are trying to basically dictate everything. And then when you call them out on it, they say, no, we're not. We're all athlete centered. I'm like, well, why is that kid crying over there because you didn't let him play in the pit? Why is that kid not signing up again for tomorrow? Why is that kid not even know how to do a back pike, but yet they can do a Miller on floor? And I start getting so confused because I see all these guys, what do you mean? And that's what you're producing? And I just get like, what are you talking about, guys? Like there's definitely a mismatch with what the educational seems to be when you're talking about it nicely, and then the way that the actual regular coach is actually applying it on a regular basis, at least from my perspective. And I've done tons of these clinics. I did the whole SAQ measurement stuff. I didn't have one person pass my test. These are high-level athletes. I'm like, how do you guys not know how to do this? Oh, well, we don't focus on it. I'm like, well, then how did you learn it in the first place then? And then they're quiet, and I get so confused and frustrated because I'm like, guys, what do you mean you don't actually know that much? Because you're an athlete. I'm playing the athlete. I taught them how to fix their front full in 2 seconds. What do you mean, guys? It's not rocket science. So, and this is where I get into just a frustrated sort of moment with some.
Let's not defend what many coaches are doing. There are some super coaches that are doing the right thing, and the majority don't know enough, and not the majority, but many are making mistakes in that development. There's also has been over time this focus on the goal elements. So there's your back pike versus a Miller, for example, and there was a time when the idea was to develop a full repertoire for gymnasts, and then they're ready for anything. And now many are focusing on what the goal element is. So I did filming for the academy program in a certain country, and a very, very top country. And I wanted to film basically everything. And for example, let's do what the heck was it? Oh, a tucked Yurchenko vault. Oh, can't do that. Never done it because they could do a double tuck. But no. Or a front lever on rings. This same guy could do from an L cross press to inverted cross, but he couldn't do a front lever.
Wow. Then
I showed him a front lever because he'd never done it. Then I showed him a front lever, and of course he went up and did it because he was 10 times as strong as me.
He just didn't know it. Okay.
No, they just didn't ever work on those elements. Like if you go to, and I would think that's quite widespread. If you try to get a top gymnast just to do a couple of giants and a layout flyaway, they'll have trouble. They can do double layout. They can do double layout, double twist, but not just a tuck or a layout because they haven't gone through that repertoire. They went straight to the goal element. So that's a problem in terms of movement repertoire.
But is it a problem? Like, what if it's not a problem? What if they're the coach that's, in that situation, let's call it, and the athlete, when I ask them about it, they say, well, I don't need it, so why would I learn it? Right. And in my head, I'm like, well, what if you need it? You don't know where you're going to go in the future by not filling in that 3-dimensional map with every possible thing you can think of. Then you're just opening yourself up for an injury is the way I see it.
No, I can't agree with you more. The massive repertoire, movement repertoire has got to be advantageous. And, if you can't do a single fly away from the high bar, but you can do a double layout, well, there's something missing because maybe you'll do need it.
You said that. I hit my head against a wall with some of these people. They pretend like, well, as long as I get Olympic medal, that's all that matters. I'm like, you guys don't appreciate the sport. The sport is all about movement and versatility and creativity and style and all that stuff that's basically been ignored until this whole freestyle wave has been going on. And for me, I can't watch a trampoline routine. I can watch one on Facebook and then I need something different. And I'm thinking like, well, why wouldn't everybody else in the world be kind of like that, or at least a big subset of the population wanting that creativity? Because when you're watching a sport, you don't want to see the same thing over and over and over again. When I talk to TV producers, they say, well, we don't really do trampoline or gymnastics because it's always the same thing. Obviously, the women's team and some of the higher ranking stuff gets in, but generally speaking, it's just not enough uniqueness. So do you ever see that the F.I.G will say something like, okay, well, we're going to now make a freestyle component where it's like it's not really difficulty or anything, it's just uniqueness, and it's maybe only one type of score, but just to try to get that more holistic approach?
Yeah, I can't speak on behalf of the trampoline committee, but I know that some members of them are certainly open to opening the possibilities within the sport, because true enough, the pathway to an Olympic medal on trampoline is so well known, and I'm not sure if there's no time to deviate, but coaches don't take time to deviate from that pathway, because there's enough training time, enough repetitions already that they have to bounce and so on. But to open it up for the masses, why? I could see that happening.
Yeah, I think it would just make the sport cooler. I just thought it was kind of a weird sport. I did it because I was indoctrinated from a young age kind of thing, like most people. But then when I kind of woke up and started using a few of my brain cells, I started asking too many questions, some may say.
Well, it's fair. You were with Dave Ross, and he's been the most successful coach in the history of trampoline, for sure.
He never coached me, barely ever. I think he played with me on a back full one time, which was cool, because he did it in a way that was more like a tilt twist, where I'm more contact twist, and he did it, and I could wait perfectly and then do it. But he was a very hands-off coach, which is funny to me, because people say, "Oh, Greg, you're all freestyle, hands-off, blah, blah, you can't do that. You got to be hands-on." And I'm like, well, Dave is very hands-off. Anyone that's ever worked with Dave knows that, and he's gotten a lot of success. So
I disagree with the too much hands-on and spotting in any of our disciplines.
No, you don't like hand spotting?
No, I don't. Well, if you're doing some kinesthetic spotting to lift someone through an element, or to do some positional spotting to make sure the body position is perfect, and so. But if you're spotting for safety or for the completion of a skill, then you should be doing something else. In my opinion.
Hardy, man, we should have.
Not 100% always, but as much as possible, you modify the environment so the gymnast can learn that element without you having to push him through it.
I'm with you 100%. I wish we had this conversation a while back. I see people, they're hand spotting back fulls on floor, and the girl can't even jump, this high off the ground. And I'm like, there's
vaulting, where they stand at the front of the vault board and flip the kid over the damn horse. And
if you can't get yourself over there, then you're missing conditioning. You're probably missing motivation. You're missing a whole bunch of other stuff. And I just, it's interesting because, like, in Denmark, their team gym atmosphere, it actually has the coach. They get marked if they don't catch the athlete if they had a bad fall, which I thought was quite interesting. I never thought about that, because then it makes it more of a team effort and the coach is there with them. Would gymnastics ever do anything like that, where if the coach doesn't throw in the pad over the high bar for a release move or something like that, and the athlete gets hurt, that they will deduct the coach in any way? Could that ever happen? Well,
I mean, we don't evaluate the training sessions, so there's no.
At the competition, if they do that at their competitions for team gym, is they have to basically catch them, or So would gymnastics ever do that?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, what we again go back to we haven't talked about the academy program yet, but what we try to do is because you're dealing with so many countries. You go to Bangladesh, or you go to Senegal or Mozambique, where they don't have facilities. They don't necessarily have very competent people for hands. You can't get them to hand spot every damn kid. And if it's on trampoline, it's even worse. Like, you're bouncing every single time. So you have to try and make sure they understand proper body position, proper technique, and the progressions, so that the gymnast, the athlete, can learn what they need to learn without being safety caught. If you're catching for safety reasons, then you're making a mistake.
Yeah, I can see you're standing by and, crap happens, so you quickly catch them. That to me is fine. That's probably just a sign of a good coach, or at least an attentive coach. But if the only reason the kid's doing it is because you're there, and it almost like, and then they'll take videos sometimes, almost like it's like some kind of acrobatic discipline in itself of hand spotting, and that's where I just like, because I've never had to hand spot a kid. If I have, it's because I've basically tried to slow it down or something, but I've never had a kid that had, like, even for Cody's or ball outs, we just go around the side, or I get them to build it up in a way where I literally don't have to do it. Because if I have 10, 20 kids in a group, how much time am I going to spend there just tossing a kid over a million times?
Well, if you get this example, and for example, on uneven bars, or mostly uneven bars, cast handstand, and the coach is standing on the box lifting the kid to hand, a great exercise for the coach. But how about starting in handstand and lowering down in control, eccentric training, and rather than the coach lifting. So these are things that we try to teach. You're not the person that's doing all the work. You're getting the gymnast to do what's necessary. for the muscles.
Would you say there's been a change over the years? Because like my coaches didn't do that. They didn't get my mats for me. I got my own mats. I had to do everything myself, and I had to figure out when I was ready. And the best that I would get from my coach is a throw over the high bar for like catch-ev or something, or a bump for a double back here and there. Only when I was taking the mats away for the first time. But they were very hands-off, and it was kind of normal from what I remember. Have you seen a change? Are they more hands-on now and scared of helicopter coaching, or is it actually still better than it was before?
Well, it depends on the discipline. So for men, I think there's less hands-on than there was. For women, it seems that there might be more in some cases. It depends on the coach. It depends on the environment. So I can't make a blanket statement about whether there's more or less. What we're trying to do is educate coaches how to do things without doing all the lifting, and without having to catch the gymnast, and without having to throw the gymnast over a vault. It's like those. If you're doing that, you're doing something very wrong.
Yeah, I agree. And you brought up the academy a whole bunch of times. So what are you guys doing with the academy? I see that you guys are launching or have already launched a giant kind of hub of information and all that sort of stuff. And is that all part of the whole academic thing?
There are two programs. There's the academy program, and then there's the age group development competition program. So for those, we have compulsories. We have technical tests for each category of element, 10 tests. So all those videos are either online or in preparation to be online. So we have so for example, we'd have, say, trampoline. We have mounts. We have bounces and flips forward and flips backwards. And for double mini, we have mounts, and we have spotters, and we have dismounts. So the different categories. And for each category of pommel horse, we have scissor work, we have flare work, we have Russian work. So dismount work. So there's 10 technical tests, age group now. They don't go into the high level stuff. And they're all videotaped. The physical preparation exercises are videotaped, and the proposed compulsory exercises are videotaped. So they're all online, or should be. I don't know if they've updated it yet. And then the academy, we videotape basically every skill for men, for women, for rhythmics. We videotape the body elements. We videotape the hand apparatus. For trampoline, we videotaped everything. Aerobics, acrobat. So it's all videotaped. I don't know. Actually, I haven't checked to see what's all online. Some of that stuff was not yet supposed to be open to the public. That was for use in the courses. But I think it will all be online soon. So there's been a lot of stuff prepared in the last 20 years or so. It's more in the last while, of course.
That's cool. So, but now you guys are moving online. We're online. Everyone's online, especially with the whole corona in more gaps than any one coach could ever do. And I think basically what it's doing is, if I look at the world and make a guess, I'm seeing that education in all sectors is basically being devalued as it's easier to obtain. And that to me is one good thing, because more people, more information, and now we're eliminating the lack of communication. And now the only thing is personal responsibility, which is a whole nother discussion, which is not going to be solved by that. But at least it removes one issue off the table, which is just a lack of resources. But with that then is like, okay, well then what do people do with it? Because you got the kids that will make a tutorial, and it might work for them, but it doesn't work for anybody else. But they have more followers because they're more in the image and they're cool and got all their Hawaiian shirts going, right? Versus a traditional national team that definitely doesn't have the same reach as these YouTubers do. And we already know that these YouTubers are hitting millions of views on their tutorials. But when I watch some of them, I go, whoa, that's dangerous. That's messed up. That's not even complete. And that's downright wrong. So how do you beat them at their game now that you're going to the online world?
Well, we're not we're doing a bit, about 2 months ago now, I wrote to the Education Commission and say, because my contract had ended February 29, just in time for COVID. So I'm on the Education Commission still, and I wrote and said, hey, everybody's doing stuff, and F.I.G has disappeared in the education market. So then we decided to at least test a series of 4 seminars and 2 webinars, so 6 in a row. And partly some of the education from the academy material. The first webinar will be more what to do in the gym, what to do without a gym. So from the problem, as we had initially in our first philosophical discussions about the academy program, was, do we want information or do we want education? And there were those that pump out the information. There were Keith Russell and myself especially. Let's select the information and make it useful for the coach, and the coach for each specific discipline. And so the education group won out. So now we're offering education. So the problem with this online stuff is information. Again, right. Who's going to help select what's useful? The stuff that people are posting on YouTube and Instagram, whatever the hell they use, is certainly not as useful as these educational Zoom things that people are trying to present, because at least they're doing an effort for an audience that's going to give them feedback.
Yeah.
YouTube is wow, look at that, and that's a whole different thing.
It's interesting. Yeah. I see from the perspective of an 8-year-old kid that doesn't know that Zoom and, more, let's say, strategic ways of being educated even exist, to the point where I would see every new kid going to YouTube first. And then if they are really interested and they don't die along in the process, then maybe finding the Zooms and the F.I.G courses and the more technical stuff later down the road. Though I wouldn't see them being introduced to it, which is really where you need it the most, right? And that's one of the concerns I have with this flood of information, that it's more about a race to the proper platform than it is actually about the content itself.
Well, so we've got two things: is this stuff is out there no matter what. One is when the gyms are still fully active, and the other is in this time of COVID where gyms are still closed or partially open or restricted access. So what do you do when the gyms are closed, when the gyms are not accessible? And really the focus then, you can't get them to do tricks on their own. If you train with your team on a Zoom and they're all logging in from home. So there has to be focus on physical preparation, on technical preparation, on artistic preparation, on fixing weaknesses, on perhaps recovering from overtraining, or continuing with rehabilitation in case that's from an injury. Okay, so you can prepare a pretty perfect athlete technically and physically without having access to the actual apparatus. Of course, you need some stuff, and maybe a couple of mats that can be loaned to you, or for Pomos it's easy, you get a mushroom. So there are some things. Trampoline, too many people have backyard trampolines that don't know what they're doing. And so that can be a real problem, because that's when they see, oh, look at this. And, well, yeah, I've got a net around my backyard trampoline. Let's go for it. And that's
taking the nets off, right? Because the nets get in the way. Because if you're off center now, your body this way, I'm now hitting the net. So they take that off as well. Plus, apparently, it's bad for filming, which I agree. But there's so for these kids that we're dealing with, for them, it's if I didn't get a good shot on camera, it didn't even matter, And it's a whole new mentality that we're learning. Like, I'm still a very traditional guy. Everything has to be like I take the freestyle stuff as a traditional person. I say, okay, well, if I'm going to be freestyle, I'm going to have the calculations to be freestyle as cool as possible. And I try to analyze it in a lot of ways that I know the parkour guys and even our own community don't like that. But I have to then kind of keep myself, okay, well, this is for me. Here's the resources, guys. I'm not forcing you to do it, because I don't think you can force someone. I know that people like to use guilt trips and the safety card and use that as a way to kind of coerce people to do stuff. I personally don't believe in that. I personally think that if they like what the offer is at the end of the day, then they will eventually find their way there, and because no one, like Dave Ross was very hands off with me. None of my coaches, I got to the point where my coaches would get so upset that I would come in and I'd say, hey, can you throw a mat? I'm trying this. Throw a mat. I'm trying this. And they'd be like, oh, we're here to train. I'm like, well, this is my type of training. This is what I want to do. I don't want to compete. That's dumb. I just want to have fun and try a new trick. Right. And that's the type of kid that would follow that sort of mentality, which I think definitely is a lot more kids than people realize. But I think those are the ones that then go online And those are the ones that will say, like, for me, I got my start by thinking about Damian Walters doing all his parkour stuff online. I didn't get that from the gym, you know, and now he's great, man. He's awesome. We did a couple of projects together and stuff. A really nice guy. And but it's that new generation that learns and starts online rather than with a structure, which is bad. Because then sometimes we get kids that just have terrible family lives, no structure, no commitment to anything, and they think they're going to do a quint. I'm like, no way, guys. But then the other side says it also opens up to a bunch of people that never would have gone to a gym club and worn tights or anything like that. So I don't know which one's better at the end of the day, you know?
Well, again, we're talking about the two different needs for online stuff. Again, in this time of COVID. Really, it's an opportunity to some extent to work on weaknesses, to improve strengths, to train in such a way that you're ready to go back to the gym. So what kind of preparation? You know, maybe some more perfect centered bouncing so you don't travel all over Hell's Acre can be done. Simple stuff that you can do in your backyard trampoline without multiple flips. Preparing for landings. Like, you know, it takes every landing is an eccentric contraction, so that's quite high forces. So they can prepare, you know, the muscle structures and the joints they need for that. You know, there's lots of things that can be done. The core strength. If you have good core strength, you're able to bounce better and more safely. So I think to use that as an opportunity to prepare, or when you finally can go back in the gym, so you can quickly achieve even more than you could before. Sometimes just doing tricks is a handicap because you've lost too much of the basics. You haven't done some of the things perfectly.
There's a lot of athletes I think that can relate to that, me being one of them, where, you know, you get so into that, Worlds is coming up or some World Cup or whatever it is, and so you just get locked into routines all day long, and you don't really. There's one time when basically I was having issues with my shoulder flexibility. It's still not very good, but I basically stopped all my routines for a good 6 months, even though I had World Cups and stuff like that going on, and basically said, I'm not doing any routines. I'm just focusing on my shoulders. And I literally bounced around, did Baranis with I had a chicken grip, like, you know, on high bar. And kind of lock it in, and I would just do literally 2 hours of that every single day, and everyone's laughing at me, but I was like, no, it's the best thing. Because then what happened, within just a couple of weeks, I applied it to my actual optional, and my optional went from an 18.5 to a 19.9, you know, all within a couple of weeks, just because I realigned my shoulders and was more, you know. And
that's a huge optional. Jesus. You know?
No, time of flight.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, time of flight. I think the only thing I got like either an 18.2 or 17.8 for difficulty.
18's up there. That's
it's gonna be interesting. So when people get back into Corona or back into the regular world, do you think they're gonna bring a lot more online education to their traditional gym clubs, or do you think they're just gonna basically forget about it, use it as a way to kind of get through the hard times now, but then they'll never really apply it?
I think it should be the former, but I think it'll be the latter. They'll go back to their traditional ways in most cases.
Yeah.
Some of the other things that can be done in the meantime is some psychological, because the uncertainty with what's going to happen, because there's going to be some gyms will close, some coaches will quit, some of their buddies will quit because parents can no longer afford lessons or whatever. So you'll get some attrition. Yeah, there'll be some sponsorship losses. If you have an international federation, there'll be some money lost there, perhaps. I don't know. So there'll be some uncertainty, and you psychologically, I guess you work on, hey, why do you love this activity? And you know, so you keep going and don't drop out, and things will be harder. You know, it's not going to go back fully at the beginning. It'll take a while.
Well, do you think they're going to diversify and realize, okay, we really got to hit a bigger market than just gymnastics, and they're going to start doing like more fitness classes, maybe aerobics classes, and you'll start seeing gym clubs kind of morph more into like fitness centers, all-purpose fitness centers with, you know, high bar and all that 1/3, but then, you know, actual weights and stuff like that, and like a membership for that specific. And are you going to see that kind of over time diversification, or do you think that they're so on the Olympics that it will just always be that for them because that's what they enjoy?
I think many clubs already do I mean, in order to survive, in some sense, if you have a high performance team and the high performance coach and the high performance choreographer, whatever you need for that program, that's almost like a lost leader. You don't make money in that group. So the money is from the large recreational classes, which can include aerobic classes, which might include using your fitness facility for additional things. And so when we ran the Port Alberni Gymnastics Academy, we had aerobics classes back in the 70s already. And I had a fitness gym, and we had a space in the back for Olympic lifting and for powerlifting that they would come in, and then we had dance classes in the dance studio aside from all our gymnastics lessons. So we had to diversify, and it worked quite well because we had a big space for that era for sure.
That's cool. I didn't know that you guys did all that. When I go into a typical gym, unless they're the top tier gyms that really are, got their head on straight, they don't really address any of those other potential demographics, and they just have their 100 competitive girls and 100 guys, or more like 20 guys, and then a huge rec program, not usually that big, and that's what they stick to, and they don't really get out there, and that's.
It depends. If you're running it as a business, you'll do more. If you're running it as a non-profit association, they can be lazy.
Well, and that's the thing. I guess I see not enough business acumen in the traditional world. Some definitely do. Like, there's definitely a lot of good partners we have in the traditional world that really are, traditional, like business minded, and they're always thinking about like Bitcoin and blockchain and this, that, and the other. But right. But the average one really isn't doing that. So I personally would love to see more of that diversification, that business sense. But I think it'll just take time, because obviously if you had been doing it, like you said, in the 70s, then it's a matter of just getting everyone else to start applying it more effectively.
Yeah, lots of gyms are doing that, or they certainly have mother and child and preschool classes and disabled. And we actually at that time brought people in to use the trampoline for skiing, for aerial skiing, which was kind of new in the 70s.
Okay. Well, that it actually brings you up to a thing, because I remember in Canada there was an accident with an athlete, and he ended up becoming paralyzed from landing on his head. And I'm told that it was partly because he didn't do any powerlifting, and he was skinny like a twig, kind of, not really a guy. And he basically, his body cracked under the pressure. I remember talking to the coach before all of this. Literally cracked under pressure, pun not intended, actually. And I remember talking to the coach before and saying, hey, do you do powerlifting? He's like, no, it's dangerous. And then when I heard that, then I realized, and some people that are inside that knew more about it than I did were kind of feeding me this information. My first question was like, well, what about powerlifting? Is powerlifting dangerous? Because I use it. I loved it. I did powerlifts all the time for my jump height. And I know like Steve Gluckstein does it in America and all these guys. So why would that coach tell me from Canada that, they don't do powerlifting because it's dangerous? But I feel like I could at least point one factor into the incident with the athlete was literally because they didn't do the powerlifting.
Well, you have to define your terms. Like if it's the sport of powerlifting, then that includes the deadlift and the squat and the bench press. And they're huge weights and usually slow rather than dynamic. So I don't think that's what you mean when you say powerlifting.
Technically I mean weightlifting, which is catch and the clean. Yeah. But yeah, I still say deadlifts and bench and all that sort of stuff. Obviously you need that as well. But yeah, specifically the power movements, even though they call it weightlifting, which I took my NCCP level 3 for that. And I always thought it was funny that they named it that way.
Well, it should be strength training, strength and power training.
Well, yeah, exactly. So I don't know. Is there any merit to what that coach was saying? But for me, it's like, well, just do it properly. Like 14-year-old girls can snatch, their body weight. Why would you not do it to your athlete to the point now where they have an injury? How is that not dangerous?
Yeah, he's wrong, in my opinion.
I agree 100%.
There's this belief, for example, you shouldn't be doing squats below 90 degrees at the knee angle. And but what are you going to do if you do a triple back on floor? And you better be able to land and have eccentric capacity below 90 degrees, because you're going to land lower than that. Otherwise, you'll rupture your knee. So of course you have to prepare through the full range of what's possible, what's necessary in your sport. You can't.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like if I looked at the sport, I'd say that back to that teach to test method or teach to the metal method, whatever you want to call it, they just take everything out that isn't where they think the athlete should be, and they're not preparing them for those bad situations where you are landing, hands and knees barely around. Because I know even in Skyriders, I was landing like that before I started landing on my feet, So, and I feel like I have seen coaches that they get too into like, okay, don't do that. Just stay on this line, this two-dimensional line, and take your little steps, but never go off of it as if somehow that's going to save them. But I'm the other way. I think Trish, Trish, my business partner at WAS, she does equestrian rally stuff and horsepower and rally, and they teach them how to fall off their horses. Right? That's rule number one, fall off your horse. But when I say that at a clinic, coaches get really uneasy and they say, well, they should never fall. I'm like, have you heard of this thing called gymnastics? I'm pretty sure you're going to fall down. Why aren't you preparing for that? Oh, no, we have the perfect technique. Everything's great. They're never going to have to fall. And I'm like, guys, that's crap. That's the dangerous thing you can do. And yet I'm apparently the dangerous freestyle guy, right? And I'm like,
in our level 1, the first biomechanics lecture, at the end of it, they kind of make the sort of comment, you should never put kids up unless you've taught them to come down, because the landing forces are higher than the takeoff forces. Yep. And then we have a session on how to fall in different ways, how to safety roll forward, sideways, backwards, yes. How to land your hands and knees, how to make sure you don't land your head. So we go through all these this short clinic. It's adapted from what Keith Russell has done many times. You probably possibly have seen it. It's a super little clinic, how to do a break fall and so on. Yeah. Kids should learn how to fall off their damn horses.
Telling you, right? Because that's the only way you're going to get right back up on the horse, And but I
tell you, from my life, I would probably have had very serious injuries 4 or 5 times in my life due to falling. Maybe I wouldn't have done what I did if I wasn't fit, but because I knew how to fall, I had nothing. So
yeah,
a straight breath and a broken neck.
Yeah, I agree. I look at I know there's the whole helicopter parent stuff, but I look at, the world's the world. You can't baby someone through the world, because even when you're dead and gone and they're, older, well, now what? Now you can't baby them anyway. So the earlier you can get to teaching them independence and responsibility and stuff, even where you get a little bit crazy sometimes with some of these kids, I would still, from a global perspective, rather that than cuddling everyone into submission where they don't understand what's going on and every little thing makes them cry. And it's just, that's not how you're going to live in the real world,
Yeah, that's another whole topic. When you think now that in many cases, parents are so afraid of their kids going out that they're prisoners in their own homes. So I'm so lucky I grew up and you basically get out of the house. If you're not outside, then we'll find something for you to do. So we were out all day, every day. But now what happens is, because parents are afraid to let their kids out, of course there were perverts out there back then as well. But if there's 50 kids out on the playground, not much of it do. But now if you go out in the playground, you're the only one, and the pervert says, "Hey, I'll take that one." So it's
yeah. It's almost that's kind of funny. That's actually quite funny. Not in a weird sort of sick way.
Yeah, but it's almost make it worse, because it gives you more reason not to send your kids out because nobody else is out. It's weird. Anyway.
It's definitely like, I don't know, you call it a double-edged sword, or I call it the whack-a-mole problem. And what you can tell from what it is, the name, but like people will do something and then all right, this kid's going to land on his head if he goes. So I'm going to make this rule in the next freestyle event that he's got to do this instead. And then they find some creative way around it. And we think that we've put all the blocks in, and they go, no, but I can do this instead. And we're like, oh. So, and it happens all the time. Like, there's a really interesting case. I think it was from the UK government, where back in the, I think the 80s or 90s, I have the PDF, I'll send it to you if you want, but they basically made this whole, don't get your child into, let's call it those kind of problems. They made a big campaign, and that actually sparked a lot of it. And this whole PDF goes through all the different examples of how the government, by scaring everyone, which is kind of exactly what's happening with the whole freestyle world, by scaring everyone and saying, oh my God, everyone's just gonna die, and then all of a sudden what it actually did was just make it worse, because now people are subconscious, self-conscious, this, that, and the other, and it just didn't actually help that much. It didn't change the actual safety statistics over time. It just made people more paranoid, which, like you said, could cause a whole nother set of problems that you're just not used to. And I thought that was kind of funny, and that makes safety a real problem. It makes education a problem because it's not even about the actual information, like you were saying. It's actually about getting people to want the information. It's that motivational factor that a lot of people and coaches, from what I see, miss completely. They kind of assume that if I'm a gymnastics coach, then therefore I know the answers and some people are going to come to me. But I'm seeing the new generation, you got to go to them. You got to go to their backyard, their social media, and help them and engage with them at their level rather than the other way around, which some coaches still can't conceive that would be a reality. But these kids are making it a reality, you know?
Yeah, it's a different population, and we certainly want to cater to them. And, you know, I mean, everyone's impressed. Like, there isn't anybody that doesn't look at those things and, holy Christ. And I see some of these BMXers go, or some of the mountain bikers go down those cliffs, and it's like, are you out of your mind? You know? Or the flips, people are flipping snowmobiles, for Christ's sake. You know, so
the guy in Nitro that did it, he got landed on him. He went to the hospital and broke a whole bunch of stuff. And I'm like, oh, because that thing's like 800 pounds. I'm sitting on it and at the show just for fun. And I'm like, oh my God, like this thing is huge. How are you flipping this thing? And but the stuff people do, it is cool. Do you think it's better for people to push the limits that way and explore new stuff, even though that comes with some dead bodies along the way? Or is it better to not explore those new things and everything just stays the same, for lack of a better term?
Well, I mean, what I think, it doesn't really matter, because I push the limits to within my capabilities and maybe a bit beyond, and these people are pushing the limits. You know, what do you do with these wingsuits? You know, the guys jumping off mountains in 3 tunnels and they're splat against the mountain. So no matter what we say or think, there will always be a group of people that will try to push the limits, that will try to do more. So the problem with something like, you do a flip, that's one thing. You do a flip for the snowmobile, well, there are new sources of potential error, and the consequences are even bigger. Yeah. So it was an interesting twist, and then they started doing it in straight body position. Then they started doing it from connections, where if the previous element is bad, you really screwed up. So at some point, there were enough problems with some concussions and some broken necks even, that they had to be prohibited. Yeah. So, you know, from the perspective of a federation, yeah, we have to make some decisions as to what can be acceptable. And it'll happen to you. You know, like, again, I come back to the what I consider totally uncontrolled land. I want to see whatever complex element they do, that they've now completed the element. You can count, there's 7 flips, now we're going to land. If it's on a body landing or a foot landing, that's immaterial. But at least it's been done. He's not just hanging on until he hits. And
I agree. Personally, I agree. I don't really say it to the community that much, but I don't like it. Well, they know I don't like them, but I know that I don't really have the choice to tell them not to do it, not at this point. But I'm hoping within 5 to 10 years that it will be normal, that everything will be landed, besides 1 or 2 of these extremely crazy ones. But most things.
But if you not manage, it's the wrong word. But if you end up with 2 or 3 or 4 catastrophic accidents because of this, then your sport's gone. So,
and that's the fine line. Yeah.
Their job is also to promote their activity. I mean, that's what they want. They want more people to do it. And if you start getting a couple of catastrophic injuries,
well, right now our injury rates are, I wrote this down in Coaching Creatures. It's updated now, but it's under like 0.5%, and they aren't even major. They're just busted ankles and knees here and there. So far, to be honest, we're doing better than I thought we would do, and I know we're doing better than a lot of other people. But I still want them to get to the point where they can just do whatever invented in their minds, but then land it whichever way they want, skillfully, not, like you said, huck and chuck, because there's no skill in that. I can get someone to double bounce me. I got people double bounce me on super all the time just for fun, and there's not really skill in that, and we're slowly trying to get them to realize. But like anything,
because if I did that, I probably wouldn't be able to just bail out at the last microsecond, but so they're at least right aware.
They train that stuff. It's very interesting. Just if I had to take a step back, just to watch these kids develop on their own with very, very little structure, they've done a lot better than I thought. Yeah, there's injuries and stuff like that. But we work with those athletes. We talk to them, you know, and like I had one of our guys bust his ankle just the other day, jumping from the Euro tramp in his backyard. Well, it wasn't a Euro tramp. It was a North trampoline, but it's like a string bed. Now they're making these high-tech garden trampolines, and he busts his ankle landing, 9 feet away, trying to land on a mattress, and he gets his foot put in between the actual mattress and the other smaller one. And now he's out for a couple weeks, and stuff like that, which I'm hoping that people will learn from that over time, because you can't run around yelling everyone to be safe with your mats and more progressions. You couldn't do it online.
One thing that occurs to me is that because there are people around the lake here. I live on the lake.
Oh, very nice view.
Yeah. There are people that have outdoor backyard trampolines, around the lake, and they pose them down, they jump on them and stuff like that. But that's a different question. But some kind of education that the people watching these YouTube videos understand that not all backyard trampolines are made the same. Like the stuff that people buy at Costco or something for $100 is not something that you should be doing quadruple flips on.
I agree. I agree.
People might not know that.
No, they definitely don't. That's what we're actually working with a bunch of manufacturers right now. We're making a documentary about it and just showing the comparisons, the differences, and all that sort of stuff. They're basically just offering a cheaper, high-performance trampoline like a string bed or a Euro, but basically for the garden trampoline market, out of just the high performance, let's call it G-Tramp stuff. We're trying to do like fitness, and we're doing rebound therapy and stuff like that with these brands. So we're looking at a holistic approach. I know people just want to look at the freestyle crazy stuff and point fingers, but that's such a small part of what we do that I'm interested to see where they go with it, and we're just trying to help them as much as we can at this point.
Well, I hope it works.
Hell, me too, because obviously my reputation is on the line, and so is our bank account, and so is our investment and all this other stuff. So obviously we want to pass as much as anybody else. So, but it was great to be able to kind of banter back and forth a little bit about education and everything, and definitely interesting perspective. I like to hear the historical perspective, because I know us young guys definitely see things a little bit differently. But there's also, I think, a lot of places where we could definitely see eye to eye, like the hand spotting and independence training and all that. So, and I'm hoping to have more dialogues like that as we progress.
Well, like I say, when I spoke first with the parkour community and trying to integrate them with what we do for F.I.G education, it was like, yeah, I grew up doing exactly what you guys are doing. Like, we didn't call it parkour, but we jumped off buildings, we ran up trees and did flips, and so you probably did that as well.
Oh yeah, that was the worst.
And in fact, I grew up in Germany when I was a young boy. My home was across the street from a railway yard, which had been bombed. So there were ruins everywhere. So I grew up playing and climbing on ruins.
That's kind of cool, actually.
So it was kind of parkour. We didn't use but even our early gymnastics was a bunch of guys getting together, egging each other on, helping each other out. So it came from that environment. But as soon as it becomes high performance, Olympics or major competition, things change. Freedom to structure. You're there.
Same thing. As the bigger brands get on board, like Red Bulls and stuff like that, they're asking for that structure already, and we're literally building it as we go. We're 3 years in, but we have a 50-year sort of time horizon, and it's all a process. And it's interesting to see the community work together. It's not top down. It's basically, I go to them, I ask them for some help and advice on things, and they say, this is what we want as a community, and then we help them kind of do it. And it's much more of a partnership than I think a lot of coaches might realize. And we just want to try to help them, and the parents are involved, everyone's involved, and they have their own traditional coaches getting involved in spotting at these events and stuff. So we are seeing a lot more crossover. So I just hope that more traditional people will, pick up the phone, have a call, discuss it, and openly figure out how do we help these kids, because it's not up to us. We can't just save kids in their backyard. That's not how this works. We have to kind of partner with everybody and have more discussions like this, and more purposeful, action-oriented discussions, not just criticizing all the bad parts, because then you can do that with traditional as well. And it's not hard to come up with a list of bad things that they do as well. So I want to skip that and get right to the action. And what do we do? So I thank you for your time and helping, just all this sort of stuff and support you've given over the last couple of years or so. And hopefully we'll get you back on to the show, and maybe we can discuss some other cool developments and all that sort of stuff.
Okay, perfect. It was nice talking to you, Greg. It was a fun topic.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed and learned a few things. There's a big world out there worth exploring, and I'm happy to be able to bring these great experiences right to you through this podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast and learned something, please share and take a screen grab of our funky cartoons and hashtag GRT certified for a chance to win a shout out to our community. Also, please leave us a review to be part of helping this information get out into the industry. It's much appreciated. Along with these podcasts, we have a large online content hub that we call the GRT Network, with many other interviews and full tutorials and written content discussing everything about acrobatics. We will be constantly growing this archive of videos like a cross between Netflix and Wikipedia for anyone in the acrobatic industry. We also have a complete online educational program for athletes of all levels that provides a do-it-yourself pathway to success for any acrobat. Check out our constantly growing library of playlists that will teach you anything from tightening up your social media, to how to get around fear, to even learning all the biology that underlies all your acrobatic skills. We work very hard with our team around the world to provide this exclusive content for you, and appreciate any donations made to the FTA to help keep these episodes coming at you. And if you want all the content, become a GRT Network full member to get exclusive content before everyone else and access to special discounts and giveaways through our amazing global partners. Thanks guys, see you next episode.